Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. This morning alongside me, as usual, is my co-host, colleague and good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Now, initially we had a program that was pre-planned in which we knew what we wanted to discuss and what we were going to discuss. We are postponing that, or deferring it, should I say, for later on in the program, because this morning we are going to discuss the breaking news that Russia has begun large-scale military operations in Ukraine at around 5:55 a.m. this morning. The Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a military operation in Ukraine's East Donbass region. From what we are getting in terms of reporting, there is operations taking place via land, sea, and air. Russia invading from the north, south, and east of their borders with Ukraine. Most of the operations taking place within the east. We have a lot of images coming in of the operation taking place, but so far the effects of this are yet to be truly seen. Most of it, though, we're recognizing through the stock exchange. Sean, this is something I suppose that was expected over the last couple of days, knowing that Russia had 150,000 of their troops on the border between Russia and Ukraine, and there was no sign of de-escalation at all.
Well, to say that it was expected, some people will say it was expected. The problem with that is, if you expected such a conflict to break out, why was there a wait-and-see approach with the hope that it won't happen? Because that's how the diplomatic game was played, and rightfully so. You don't want to be the one now to spark off a conflict, trying to prevent a conflict. That is counterproductive. But for the most part, the Western powers looked at the situation. Yes, America said that they believed that this was going to happen, but Ukraine itself actually, I've heard reports where there's disbelief, the fact that Kiev, the capital, has been attacked by either aircraft bombs or missiles. And they did not expect it to be this large, because what's happening is, for the most part, unprecedented. This is the first time, or this is the closest, that the world has seen a nuclear power go to be involved or commence a significant conflict on its own borders and potentially put it on a path to have a direct military confrontation with another major nuclear power. So we've never seen this before. Also, we haven't seen any sort of conflict in Europe since World War II, 1945. So the specter of the Soviet Union, the specter of the enemy that NATO was designed to defend Western Europe from, was always looming on the horizon, but Russia was a shadow of the USSR. But now it seems as though enough time has passed that reality might come to pass.
Well, Mr. Putin stated that Russia is acting in self-defense over Ukraine's position to become a member of NATO, stating that Ukraine has now become a threat to Russia's national security. He's also stating that they do not want to occupy Ukraine, but they'd like to demilitarize and denazify the country. We're getting reports shown via various news outlets throughout the world that roughly 40 Ukrainian troops have been killed and around 50 Ukrainian civilians have also been killed. Ukraine has stated that they have killed roughly 50 Russian troops, but that is unverified.
Yeah, it's very unverifiable right now. So the casualty reports, we're really not going to know. We don't even necessarily know the extent of the fighting, how many units are engaged, how exactly is the Ukrainian army fighting back, because they are being pressed by potentially three sides and heavily outnumbered. However, the justifications that Putin has stated are some of them are interesting, and it's an interesting how you could potentially twist the truth. Some of them are just outright unbelievable, because the fact that an Eastern European Jewish head of state is somehow leading a Nazi junta to rule Ukraine. First of all, for people who don't necessarily know, not all people of a white skin color qualify in the eyes of white supremacists, right? Eastern Europeans and Slavics are just as, how should I put it, non-Aryan as Jews. So, and again, as I said, the Ukrainian president, he is Jewish, which is traditionally the first target of the Nazi party. So to call the Ukraine's government a junta, and I think could be because ultimately he does not want Ukraine to join NATO, because he does not want NATO on his doorstep, which is interesting because ultimately I don't think NATO could in any shape or form be looked at as an aggressor, which means that to him, the real threat is not NATO potentially attacking him. NATO depends on America to pay for part of the defense against him. The real thing that he's probably looking at is if Ukraine joins NATO, then I could no longer subvert NATO. I have Russian-backed separatists in Ukraine. Sorry, I can't usurp Ukraine. I have Russian-backed separatists there. He's probably had his eye on Ukraine after he took the Crimea. He was probably looking at more territory that he may or may not have been able to grasp depending on situations. I thought he would have gone in for limited objectives because it would have been very easy for him to just take those contested regions in the east, and then the Western nations might have been, you know what, we'll leave him with that.
Well,
but he seems to be reaching for more.
We've heard from the Russian president, and we've also heard from the Ukrainian president, who used very strong words diplomatically, using strong words to condemn Russia's attack on Ukraine. He was very fierce in his speech. That's Volodymyr Zelensky. He stated that this is one of the darkest hours since World War II, indicating that it's now a direct threat to diplomacy, to democracy, and one of the greatest threats to Europeans' national security. This has also had an effect on the stock market, Sean. Of course, stocks do not like to be volatile. They like to be some stability. We've seen investors now gearing towards more traditional safe stocks such as gold. The price of gold has been rising, but we're also seeing oil shoot up to over $100 a barrel for the first time in 7 years.
When the coalition liberated Kuwait, all of the build-up for that had a tremendous cost in just fuel and other logistics, but fuel especially, which was ironic because they were essentially trying to liberate a gas-producing country. Now, this is not necessarily at that scale yet, but depending on how the conflict goes on, jet fuel, military operations, that's going to cut into the global supply of energy, which right now is technically at a shortage, you could argue, with the price of oil being almost at $100. So with Russia being one of the biggest suppliers, particularly in that region of the world, we could be looking at Russia just saying, well, we need everything to supply our military operation, as President Putin put it. And with regards to other stocks and the destabilizing effect of the situation, right now, it's not too destabilizing because this is just the opening moments. But there are a lot of different ways where this could, in the long run, be a significant problem, destabilizing Eastern Europe, destabilizing potentially the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the EU to some extent. But the implications could also have a knock-on effect in Southeast Asia and other parts of the world. Because one thing that I did not understand is the US President Joe Biden warning of the invasion, but then revealing part of his hand by saying, well, we're not going to send any troops in. Well,
that's what we've been trying to figure out this morning. In fact, I very briefly had a discussion with Andy Johnson just before coming on this program. And I was asking, they've stated that they stand with Ukraine and that this is an attack on democracy and the world, and yet Western allies have taken the decision not to send troops in on the ground. As yet, they will support Ukraine. To what extent, we don't know. But also, we are getting images coming in from various news outlets throughout the world right now. I'm looking at a video that BBC just made public, and it's incredible. A missile actually hitting the airport in Kiev, Ukraine's airport in Kiev. There are explosions throughout the country. Citizens have begun going to ATMs to try and take out as much funds as possible due to not knowing what this is going to lead to and possibly a collapse of the economy. We're also seeing Ukrainian citizens, they're actually heading to bomb shelters and some of them to cities metro. And in Russia, it seems to be the same, where citizens have now flooded ATMs in order to try and withdraw funds from their accounts.
Right, but Russian citizens, at least not yet, and probably will not have to worry about attacks on their civilian population centers. One of the interesting things in Ukraine is already last night there was a significant traffic jam of people trying to flee west. So the people who remain, because it seems to be it's not feasible to try to evacuate themselves. Now they're trying to find bomb shelters and shelter in place, which could be potentially risky. Back to the U.S. president, Latvia is the nation west of Ukraine where I believe that NATO forces are being sent. So the U.S. troops, the U.S. troops that were sent to Latvia. The Latvian Minister of Defense, he actually came out and called on European countries, particularly Germany as the largest European country, to do something about this now, because as he fears, and I think rightfully so, if you let Russia get away with this sort of aggression with no consequence and economic sanctions to a military dictator or to a military would-be conqueror is not any sort of consequence that's going to dissuade him. It didn't dissuade Venezuelan dictatorship. It didn't dissuade Cuban dictatorship. It didn't dissuade. It's not doing anything about North Korean dictatorship. So the Latvian Minister of Defense, he has warned on a European network, Germany needs to do something, Europe needs to do something, the West needs to do something. Otherwise, this could just be the start of further aggression. Because if there's no consequence, and if he could get away with it, Putin is probably going to figure, what else could I take? The Baltic states is another vulnerable situation because they're flanked by pro-Russia Belarus. So and the whole situation is odd because Russia essentially got surprised, strategic surprise. Europe is out of position to respond to this. So right now, Ukraine stands on its own. And this is why the Russian troops on the Ukrainian border was such a threat, much more so than Ukraine potentially joining NATO.
Moldova actually has closed its airspace and is about to declare a state of emergency over what's taking place. They border Ukraine, but they've also opened their borders to Ukrainians. Poland has also opened up its border. They are going to set up about 8 strategic points to give Ukrainians food, shelter, and information. So a lot is taking place here. Let me just give you quickly some reactions of leaders from around the world. U.S. President Joe Biden this morning stating that Mr. Putin had chosen a premeditated war that will bring catastrophic loss to life and human suffering. The world will hold Russia accountable. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he was appalled by the horrific events in Ukraine and that Mr. Putin had chosen a path of bloodshed and destruction by launching this unprovoked attack. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg condemned Russia's reckless attack, saying it put at risk countless civilians' lives. Europe faces its darkest hour since World War II, says European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell. Donald Trump has even gotten involved. Donald Trump has stated that Mr. Putin took advantage of American weakness. He called Fox News to say that he didn't believe Putin wanted to do this initially.
I think the first part of that statement is true, and the second half of that statement is just him, talking out of his you-know-what. But yes, American weakness, particularly with regards to the fact that how do I put it? We as a society, as a global society, have not had a major war between two large, significant military powers in quite some time. People might say, oh, well, there was the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. Those were not wars like what our forefathers would think of as wars. World War II, World War I, the Spanish Civil War even. These were low-scale conflicts, even though they involved, or low-intensity conflicts, even though they were of a large scale. This is different. This is a nation full-on invading another nation, not just with a small peacekeeping force or anti-terrorism force, but full-on heavy equipment to topple an entire government.
Well, speaking of that, just to also let you know that Ukraine has now called out roughly 40,000 reserved troops, and the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has indicated that if anyone wants a gun in Ukraine, they will get one. They will be armed.
This is the interesting thing. The one thing that I could understand from NATO is that the risk of engaging in conflict with another nuclear power to then cause nuclear war you expect it to be high, but the problem is you just don't know because you've never seen this scenario before, right? The Russia and the West has never actually gone into conflict. China, once it became a nuclear power, has never directly gone into conflict with any other major nuclear power in the world. So I could understand not wanting to be involved. However, the thing with Ukraine is, yes, you could put a gun in everybody's hand, but that's not going to stop heavy tanks and jets coming to steamroll over you. I don't know if the West is thinking, let Ukraine become like Iraq, and Russia is now having to fight down every man on a corner with a gun who's going to try to ambush them or use IEDs.
Well, now what we're hearing from Vladimir Putin is that Moscow's response, will be instant if anyone tries to interfere with Russia. What we're seeing from Western allies is that they are now going to put in place sanctions that, according to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, will hobble Russian economy. Now,
yeah, but
I'm just about to say, how effective are sanctions? I mean, we've seen and we've heard of sanctions. We've heard them condemning this. I mean,
like I said, they sanction a nation that does something that the diplomatic world does not agree with, and that nation does not stop the behavior that everyone disagrees with. It didn't stop Iran, it didn't stop North Korea, it didn't stop Cuba, it didn't stop Venezuela. So when Russia, the thing is, Putin has committed, right? The amount of money it takes to mobilize almost 200,000 troops, plus all of the air power that he's probably put in place, the logistics that he's put in place. And when President Biden says it's premeditated, he is correct. You cannot launch a campaign of this size on a whim, right? The US can't just go, well, we'll launch a campaign with 100,000 troops tomorrow just because we can. It takes a lot of time to build up your logistics in order to do that. And it seems as though maybe some people might have ignored the signs, but the signs were there. So it is premeditated. And when Putin says, we're going to respond if anybody interferes with our operation, that's because he has no choice. He's committed to this course of action. We just don't know how far he plans to go. And I think one of the mistakes might be to assume that he's just going to go in for limited gains at this point. He's already bombed essentially the capital of foreign states. So to say he's going to just stop at the separatist regions that want to declare independence, now it's more reasonable to assume that was just pretense for the opening stages of him getting his troops in position. The fact that, again, he wants to say that there's a junta and there's Nazism in Ukraine is...
Very quickly, Sean, people watching Talking Point right now probably thinking, listen, how is this relevant to Trinidad and Tobago? How is this going to affect Trinidad and Tobago? And I go back, West Texas Intermediate and Brent crude prices, they've shot up to over US $100 a barrel. That's the first time in 7 years we're seeing something like this taking place.
Right, but here's the real thing. So yes, if we were a major oil producer, we'll be experiencing wonderful dividends now, except with a major conflict, prices of certain commodities, inflation is not just going to increase because the price of oil increases to transport and ship it and produce it, but also the fact that you're going to have this vacuum now, depending on how long it takes for Ukraine to collapse, if it reaches that point. And all the while this war is going on, up until Ukraine potentially collapses, then resources, inflation is going to happen because of shortages, whatever goods and services that Ukraine produce, which includes vehicles and equipment, but also it could be energy and grain. So if I am correct about Ukraine being a grain producer, right, then we could see that now reducing global supply in a time where we already have inflation.
Well, Ukraine is actually one of the biggest exporters of grain to the world.
Right. So now we have to worry further increases on top of the increases from the rising energy prices to the price of flour. Because all alternatives, so even rice and potatoes will probably be affected. But then now, there is the wider implications. What happens to Europe? What will happen with the alliances and the treaties and then the trade agreements? This is all going to affect our economy. What's going to happen in Southeast Asia? If the US is perceived as being weak, they don't have to be weak. They just have to be perceived as being weak for certain other elements to decide that military action might be the correct order of the day. Well, here's an interesting problem. In Southeast Asia, That's where a lot of our electronics that we import are manufactured. So what happens now if Taiwan and China now get embroiled in a conflict? All of a sudden, all of the things that we import start to become more expensive.
Well, just to give you some more information in relation to Ukraine, apart from Ukraine, they're also one of the biggest exporters of chicken, of eggs, and of cheese. Very basic supplies.
We don't have to buy from them for that to affect the prices.
Exactly. Furthermore, also they're one of the biggest countries in terms of coal reserves, and also one of the biggest in terms of land mass and arable lands, as well as known natural resources. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're either first or second in the world in terms of uranium.
Yes, and that's the other scary prospect. The fact that Putin is now making a play for oil reserves, for grain reserves or arable land, but also for uranium reserves. Mm-hmm. And what he might do with it, we don't know. To be fair, Russia already has nuclear weapons, so it's not that big of a deal as if a terrorist organization suddenly got access to nuclear weapons. However, here's another interesting thing. Depending on what happens with Europe, if you are a big believer of man's carbon footprints being the main factor of climate change and the rising sea levels, this whole thing might put climate initiatives on hold, because when you have the potential war literally on your doorstep, green initiatives all of a sudden don't become as important. So there are a lot of other issues like that also can get the knock-on effect of being pushed down the pipe because we have more pressing concerns.
Anyway, folks, as the latest unfolds between Russia and Ukraine and the response from the West, once we get more information, we will share it with you here in Talking Points and on WESN. But for now, we're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to focus a bit more on what's taking place locally, more so what transpired in the Senate 2 days ago. Again, it's a tit-for-tat, but there are rules and there are formalities that must be obeyed and followed, and we're not seeing that. So much so that the President of the Senate, Christine Kanglu, questioned whether or not she was actually dealing with adults. We'll take a look at what transpired in a few moments. Stay tuned to Talking Point on the Content Capital. This is WESN.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone, with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel, and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. So focusing on what transpired in the Senate on Tuesday, well, it was very fractious. Now, first of all, it was requested on the part of government senators that opposition Senator Wade Mark be sent to the Privileges Committee for allegations made against NIB chairman and the appointment of the new NIB chairman, Patrick Ferreira. Now, Christine Kangaloo, who is the president of the Senate, stated that she will make a decision in due course. Ramrat said Mark had dubiously alleged, now bear with me, this is quite long, that the central bank had debarred Ferreira as managing director of the Consolidated Insurance Company, or CIC Limited, for allegedly giving an unlawful rebate on a commission on a big home ownership policy plan, with a brokers association complaint then made to the supervisor of the insurance, which is the central bank, leaving Ferreira disqualified from holding any position in the insurance industry and rendering him unfit to head the NIB. These were refuted by government senators, stating that they inquired with the central bank and they advised that no notice disbarring Patrick Ferreira, disqualifying him from holding any position in the insurance industry, had been issued. Now, let's get into the entire situation as it took place. And we're starting off now with the discussion between the Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines, and opposition Senator Wade Mark. Now, the video is a bit long, but you need to see the entire thing so that we put it into context. And here I say that this is just a follow-up of what transpired last week, where it seems as though Fitzgerald Hines continued with his normal ways. I still don't know how it's allowed. I still don't know how he gets away with it. And the leader of the People's National Movement, who is the Prime Minister, does not act upon his minister just simply behaving in the manner in which he does. But Wade Mark came prepared this time and had a small jab at Fitzgerald Hines. It was uncalled for and unnecessary, but what do you expect after you rile up an individual after so long? Let's take a look at the clip of the Minister of National Security.
The Caribbean Center for Human Rights is a local entity managed by one Diana Mahabir Wyatt, an ally of the senator who posed this question and whom I caught on the prowl with him recently in a bogus scandal in St. Anne's, water scandal. Madam President, the proper protocol...
Minister, you know, I have repeatedly said in this chamber that we have to be careful when we speak about persons who are not members of this chamber.
Madam President, the proper protocol vis-à-vis requests of this nature requires official written submissions to be made to the Commissioner of Prisons for onward transmission to the Minister of National Security for due consideration. To date, no such request has come to the Minister of National Security.
Senator Mark.
Can the Minister provide evidence that Diana Mahabir Wyatt is an ally of Senator Wade Mark and by extension the United National Congress?
Senator Mark, I won't allow that question. I have already advised the Minister about that statement that was made.
Madam President, can I ask the Honourable Minister, upon a receipt of an application by this particular organization, the Caribbean Center for Human Rights, to have access to the nation's prison, would the government favorably consider such an application from this very important human rights body?
Minister.
Madam President, I don't know if the senator is having some difficulty with comprehension. I just said to him what the procedure was and indicated that it has not been embarked upon as far as this minister is aware. I can't understand that question.
Senator Mark?
Yeah. I don't know why the minister is so riled up today.
Senator Mark, please ask the question.
Did you take your tablets?
All right. Senator Mark, I think we can move on at this stage. All right?
Mr.
Question. Thank you very much.
Not well.
No, Senator Mark, please withdraw that statement. Please withdraw it.
Withdraw.
Thank you.
Don't you just love this? Don't you just... First of all, to the Minister of National Security, he answered the question. In all fairness to him, now there was no need for him to say a bogus water scandal with an ally of the UNC. There was no need for that, but we've grown accustomed to that. Why are we accepting it still? God only knows why. But then Senator Wade Mark asked two questions which the President of the Senate did not allow because it did not align with what the initial question asked. And then Senator Mark asked a further question of which the President of the Senate allowed in relation to whether or not any application would be favorably considered. Now, Fitzgerald Hines stated that he just basically stated, he made it clear what the procedure was. But that did not answer Wade Mark's question. It did not answer his question at all. So he went on to make a further jab about the comprehension of the opposition senator, who was prepared after remarks were made last week about his hairstyle, basically asking Fitzgerald Hines, did you take your tablet this morning? Are you feeling unwell, sir? He then had to withdraw those comments as stated by the President of the Senate. Sean, again, don't you just love this? And we're seeing it from both sides now, actually.
The interesting thing is you could argue that these two gentlemen are elder statesmen. How many parliamentarians have been part of Parliament for as long as they have? And Senator Mark was, I believe, the Speaker of the House under the People's Partnership. So he has played and continues to play a senior role. Minister of National Security, you could argue, is a senior role in the government. So here we have two people who are supposed to be setting an example for the leadership of our country. What is leadership? Well, leadership is avoiding the issue, grandstanding, and asking if you have taken your pill and why are you so cranky this morning. Well, that's official communication. These are the halls of Parliament. This is not rum shop talk. So while you might think, oh, well, that's fine, well, there's no big thing. No. This is
the Minister
official business
of National Security loves to antagonize and provoke. He also makes various comments which attribute not only allegations, but at the same time, he's playing a political game with the business of the nation. But again, as I repeat myself, we have grown accustomed to seeing this. Why we still accept it, I really am not sure why. But there was no need for the opposition senator to then go down that road as well. It would have been best if he just continued with the business of the Senate, the business of the government, and the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It does not make sense for you to fall or stoop to their level in order to meet them, to try and comprehend what they were stating. But nevertheless, it's something that we often see. I do not agree with it. I do not like it. I can only hope that it doesn't continue, but then I'd be lying to myself. I need to be a bit more realistic. But it got even better. This time, we're looking at the Minister of Health, who had a wonderful answer in relation to the government's vaccine mandate. or need I correct myself and state that it's not a mandate? Let's take a look at what the Minister of Health stated.
Madam President, can the Minister indicate whether the government's policy as it relates to the implementation of a mandatory program of vaccinations captured under a safe zone policy. Can the Minister share with this Honorable Senate whether the government will be pursuing that mandate in the coming period?
Senator Mark, I won't allow that question.
Madam President, the Minister said that the government is committed to a voluntary approach as outlined by the World Health Organization. Can the Minister indicate why the government has varied or deviated from that approach with its new policy position?
Senator Mark, I won't allow that question based on the answer that was given.
Is the government going to withdraw, given the fact that so many countries on a global basis have withdrawn the approach that the government is preparing to take through legislation? Is the government prepared to withdraw that position as it relates to its vaccination policy?
Minister.
Thank you. Madam President, it is really sad that the UNC continues to push this narrative that this is a mandatory vaccination policy. Nothing is further from the truth. I have said clearly, everyone from the Honorable Prime Minister come down has said this is a voluntary process. It is not a mandatory process. There is no mandate, there is no forced vaccination. That is the UNC's position.
Well then, Minister of Health, once more you failed to answer a direct question.
Well,
hold on. After the President of the Senate did not allow two questions on the part of the opposition senator, and rightfully so, to be heard on the part of the Minister of Health, opposition senator Wade Mark then asked his question. The Minister of Health did not answer the question. He did not. We can listen to the question again, the final question on the part of Wade Mark, and then hear the answer. But I'm not even concerned about that. I don't want to get too caught up in the debate about a mandatory vaccine policy or a voluntary vaccine policy. What I'm concerned about is the mere fact that in the Senate, when a direct question is asked, that such a response was given by the Minister of Health. Again, need I say, in the best interests of the government and working for the people, it would be better to give a direct answer in relation to legislation and policy and whether or not the government is considering withdrawing that whilst we followed other nations throughout the pandemic to take a learning lesson out of their pages, out of their book. Senator Wade Mark asked in relation to that.
To me, the issue here is different. And the issue here is Senator Mark's inability. And I'm going to sound like I'm a government shill. And it's not that I prefer the Minister of Health over Senator Mark, but Senator Mark's inability to get a pertinent and significant question on the issues that could be asked in a technically relevant way. Because yes, we will all admit the policy is effectively mandatory vaccination. It's practically mandatory vaccination, but technically and legally it is not. And instead of trying to harp in the avenue that Senator Mark was doing, he should have implied the issue as much as possible, right? Ask, well, how is it that it's not mandatory if you are potentially holding people's livelihoods over their heads, and leave it there? The other thing is, yes, he is asked if they'll withdraw the policy, but technically speaking, we haven't gotten legislation on this issue to be withdrawn, and the policy itself, we haven't gotten a finalized policy. For all intents and purposes, the government has merely stated the intent. It's even questionable if they ever fully intended to bring out this policy, or still do, given how they are dragging their feet to implement it already.
So here's my response.
Senator Mark is saying, will you withdraw something you haven't implemented yet?
Hold on.
Or asking, sorry.
Right. So let's get a couple of things. First of all, this is where we have to listen to the questions very carefully. Because I agree with you, in terms of Senator Mark composing the question, it could be done a lot better. That is why when he asked his initial 2 questions, the President of the Senate did not allow it. And his third question, if you realize how he altered it, in his third question, he did not even use the word mandatory. He didn't use the word mandatory in his third question. Hold on. He didn't. And this is where I'm stating there's a bit of an issue, because I agree in terms of composing the question, Senator Mark needs to be a bit better. However, you don't know what the President of the Senate is going to allow. In relation to that, the response on the part of the minister is, again, answering the same question that was not allowed by the President of the Senate, whilst not answering the question posed that was allowed.
So it's fair to say that, but what I'm saying is, the third question, it's not about mandatory, it's about the fact that what has the government presented to be withdrawn?
So what
officially?
So again, this is where we need to follow the timeline of events.
No.
Hold on. Last week, Thursday, I believe, Thursday or Friday, the Attorney General stated that legislation has been written. And hold on, it has not been made public as yet, as he is awaiting the Prime Minister's return to make it public. What Senator Mark is asking is that before such legislation is made public, whether or not the government will consider withdrawing it. That is what he was asking.
Yes, but Keaton, you can't withdraw something you've never released.
You can withhold it though, Sean.
That's not what he asked.
Fair enough.
That's my point.
Fair enough.
My
but
point
this is where I go back.
because people are going to listen to the specific words that Senator Mark used, and it implies that the government has a policy in place, when technically speaking, the policy is not in place and public sector workers are yet to be affected by any intentions to have the quasi-safe zone policy.
Now, on a technicality, I will state, fine, fair enough, withhold, withdraw, okay, fair enough. But is that really pertinent to the overall issue
This
which
is
Mark was
Parliament. The technical meanings of your questions and your statements matter in Parliament. That's why the first 2 questions were essentially blocked, because the technicality of them, right? They were supposing or making assumptions that are yet to be established, you could argue, legally as fact. Because legally, if I don't want to take the vaccine, even under the quasi-safe zone policy, I don't have to. You're twisting my arm because you're taking away my livelihood, but I am not mandated with no recourse.
Is it of any sort of pertinence that Senator Mark used that word in relation to the fact that the Attorney General, again, has not been made public, but has stated that the legislation has been written?
I think he was fishing for a question on the issue, to hammer the issue of mandatory vaccinations. And as you said, the third question, he did what he had to do to get a question out, but you could see that his mind was working. Meanwhile, yes, you're right, the Minister of Health did the wrong thing. He essentially gave an answer to the question that Senator Mark wanted to ask, which was completely unnecessary. Although you could argue he could be trying to deflect the issue in the long run, but tactically speaking, he shouldn't have done that either.
Now, continuing with what took place on the Senate on Tuesday, Opposition Senator Anil Roberts was evicted from the chamber. And again, need I say, I agree with the President of the Senate, Christine Gangaloo, in relation to her dealing with the situations beforehand. For the most part, I have seen the President of the Senate be very fair when compared to the Speaker of the House. But let us not get too much into that particular debate. Let us now take a look at what transpired in relation to Senator Roberts being evicted on Tuesday.
Honourable Senators, I will now revert to the earlier... No, Senator Roberts, not at this stage. Senator Roberts, I have said no, you cannot raise it. This is not any such thing. Senator Roberts, please apologize for your rudeness.
Please apologize for asking for evidence.
Senator Roberts, you know, it's not as if you haven't been a member of Parliament before. And therefore you should know that there are certain rules and procedures. All right? And no, Senator Roberts, I will ask you, please, if you continue like this, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the chamber. Senator Roberts, please leave the chamber for the rest of the day. Senator Naked, you really want to go down this route? Senator Naked, you are out of order, and I would ask you to desist from this line of conduct.
Now, to me, this is just civil disobedience on the part of the opposition senator. Now, he has every right to ask for evidence in relation to the claims made by Clarence Ramrat that they did work with the central bank in requesting any information on Patrick Ferreira and his alleged disbarment from doing work or holding any position within the insurance industry. So Anna Roberts does have the right to ask for that, but there is a time and place. For example, on the Monday Night Forum, when you were attacking the Prime Minister and making it very personal over his wife and family, maybe then was the opportunity for you to ask for evidence. And then you can continue pushing that. This is where the opposition many of times have seem to have failed. They do not push these matters when it is due. At that point in time, there was no need for that. And when asking to apologize for his outburst from the President of the Senate, of course, Senator Anna Roberts was sarcastic. Now, again, every right to ask for it, but time and place. In fact, know how to behave, know how to carry about yourself. As pointed out, it's not the first time that he's a member of Parliament. He has been there before. Now, to be very honest with you, in any law-abiding country, Senator Anna Roberts will not be in this position. He will not be holding any position within Parliament. In fact, the allegations made against him in relation to life sport would have at least seen some sort of trial or investigation taking place. But it amazes me that that has been allowed to just sit on the bench, in fact, sink deep to be forgotten about. It amazes me still how he has been given the opportunity and the position as an opposition senator. And it is frustrating to note that this is his behavior and decorum within the Senate. More intriguingly is the fact that opposition senator David Naked then seemed to have taken over the role that Anna Roberts was playing at that time.
Because I think a lot of the times politicians seem to forget themselves. First of all, that kind of goes along better in the House because the Speaker is a bit biased, so the opposition will get away. And you could even argue might have to be a bit more antagonistic to the presiding officer who is potentially biased against them. So at least to the public, they'll get away with that a bit more there. In this situation, it's for the most part unnecessary, right? Senator Roberts got his answer, and then literally he was not kicked out for trying to push an issue that he should not have pushed. He was kicked out literally just with his attitude responding to the President of the Senate, who, as far as we've seen, as you said, has not shown bias and has shown for the most part professionalism, and when ready, has disciplined the government, senators or ministers for speaking out of turn during Senate proceedings. So this was completely unnecessary to be antagonistic towards her, right, the presiding officer of the Senate. And I just have to ask, to what extent is the informality of our political system, where the bubble is seems to be the driving force of a lot of it, right, with the political arguments. They forget themselves. You're not on a political platform. You're in the Senate, where formal rules, I would hope, would be observed in order for Parliament to conduct the business of creating and debating legislature. Because we have a lot of issues that needs to be done for. So this sort of thing, and it's not Senator Roberts alone, but this is just the clearest example of what an unnecessary thing, because now he was out of the Senate for the rest of the day. So to some extent, what sort of political message was he trying to send with that? Yes, your base might be happy for it, but I don't expect even moderates to say, yes, that was a good job, you really showed them. Show them what? Show them what? That you don't know how to conduct yourself and the presiding officer has to remove you so that the Senate could go on? And Senator Naked, that to me is just somebody who might be too inexperienced to know better.
Well,
maybe he shouldn't be there.
I don't think you necessarily need experience in knowing how to conduct yourself within Parliament or outside of the walls of Parliament.
Well, this is why I say the elder statesman.
Yes.
It's not just about age.
Yes, and you're right. This is where Fitzgerald Hinds, who's been a member of Parliament for many years, Wade Mark, who's also been a member of Parliament in varying positions for many years, can set an example. And also Terence Yalsing as Minister of Health. Yes, his position has become very political, especially over the course of the pandemic, but he does not need in any way to still spew that political rhetoric to get back at those who are spewing it at him.
I think they're so accustomed to answering it that way, they don't know
fair enough,
how to be
the best thing
official and diplomatic.
The best thing you can do to respond to any sort of political misbehavior or misconduct is do your job. Do it effectively. Do it well. Let it speak for yourself. Let it speak on your behalf. It will show. And if it is that you still feel as though it is unnecessary what they're throwing at you, then provide them with the necessary evidence as requested. So on both sides, the behavior is appalling. And this is why it led the President of the Senate to make this speech after Anna Roberts was evicted from the Parliament.
Honourable Senators, it amazes me that we have to go over certain procedures in this chamber. It amazes me that I'm speaking to adults, and by now everybody should be versed with the standing orders. So it amazes me when I'm faced with the indiscipline that I was just faced with. But I move on.
But could you blame her for saying that? That, in my opinion, yes, she was referencing the fact that she had to evict Anna Roberts from the chamber. But that, in my opinion, was a very balanced and unbiased statement made in relation to the behavior, the attitude, the decorum of parliamentarians on a whole, not just within the Senate, but on a whole. And this is the sort of leadership and politics that we do not need and we should not accept. Sean, before we break for news on the hour, I'm not sure if there's any concluding statements you'd like to make.
Well, just so it might appear that we are against the opposition because some of the more stronger examples were opposition senators. However, I will just say this, we need to put it into context. They were engaging with government ministers, and right now, the cabinet, for the most part, have learned a sorry lesson. When they speak, chances are they're going to put their foot in their mouth. So they tend to have a default of not speaking out as much. The UNC does not have this. Their default is to speak out too much. So part of it is we are just commenting on what we witnessed. But I do believe that it is because the government is a bit more hesitant to speak out with regards to their opinions at times, Minister Hinds notwithstanding, in the Senate, because they know that the criticisms are ready and waiting to be leveled upon them when they do say foolishness, which it has done in the last 6 years.
It's rather unfortunate. I'm asking both sides to try and set an example for the younger politicians of the nation and for the younger politicians to not follow what you would have just witnessed. Let's break for news in the hour here on WESN. When we return, we open the phone lines this morning.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Green Dot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, B-Mobile 107, Digital 21, ICN TT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. Let us now open up the phone lines and give you, the viewer, the opportunity to contribute to the program. We'd like to hear from you on the issues affecting you and affecting Trinidad and Tobago. 623-9376, 622-9338. Call in and join us on the program. Good morning, caller from Pitty Valley.
Good morning, Sean and Keaton.
Good morning.
With the issue of Russia invading Ukraine, what we have to watch is sleeper in this whole incident here is China. You realize China is not saying nothing. China is supporting Russia. So all the sanction America could put on Russia, it doesn't matter. China is the key player here, supporting Russia. And Venezuela friends is Russia too.
Yes, yeah.
So you have to watch this thing. And Russia supply a pipeline of gas to Germany.
Nord Stream 2.
So Germany have to kind of dance
around that.
Easy because Russia could switch off the gas. So you have to watch these.
No, well, call
the line's not active as yet.
From what I understand, also Germany is a purchaser of gas from Russia, but essentially they are started to buy their natural gas from the US right now.
And the line has not become active as yet. And the German Chancellor, Mr. Scholz, has indicated that they've put sanctions in place to stop any sort of regulations being approved for the line.
But watch China is the sleeper.
Yeah.
China is the big player here in this with Russia. And 2 days back, a caller from Marvel, I think, tried to defend Anna Roberts when he attacked the Prime Minister and his wife and children, and said Anna Roberts is a bright guy and he's a lawyer. Anna Roberts is not a lawyer. His family, all his family is lawyers. He tried to be a lawyer and didn't make it. He's not a lawyer. His brothers, his parents are lawyers, not Anna Roberts. To the caller from Marvel. Have a nice day.
You too, caller. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if China gets involved in any sort of conflict, and it will probably be in the Pacific, that's going to affect us even more because the manufacturing good, as I mentioned.
China?
Russia, we don't necessarily import from Russia, but Russia as a grain producer themselves, with Ukraine and Russian grain being off the global markets.
China has already made a statement stating that Russia is a sovereign state and do not need to inform them of any invasion when asked if they were informed before the Olympics. And furthermore, they've actually refused to call it an invasion.
China is a sovereign state, and Taiwan is a province, according to China, of the People's Republic of China. So is
Hong Kong.
Right, but Hong Kong is under their control. If there is an invasion of Taiwan, it technically won't be an invasion. It would merely just be continuation of the Civil War.
Good morning, caller from Digo Martin.
Good morning, Mr. Shah and Mr. Small.
Good morning.
I want to reflect on the education system. And I'm going to bring 2 points to you all, and then we'll connect the dots. First of all, there was a recent court decision, basically, where the Ministry of Education and by extension EFCL did not put in a defense for a claim against them for not finishing one of the many schools outstanding, right? Why was this done? Why no defense was not put in? Because you have a humongous amount of litigation for other schools. And that is a precedent sent forward. So what it's telling us, the ministry, by extension, and the minister has made a moo-moo and has mashed up the education system. If you don't have facility, you can't provide a proper education. The thing is, what I want to ask, and I'm thinking outside my cardboard box, was this a payback for that contractor who was the chairman of TSTT? And where's TSTT has gone now? TSTT is on the verge of collapse and privatization. Was that, and I don't want to use the word payback, but some sort of, you understand where I'm going with it?
Yeah. So
the other thing I want to talk about, and it's the education system are going in, is that where are the scholarship winners? Have they announced it?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we have a parallel education system that focuses on failures as opposed to meritocracy? I mean to say, if we have an education, we want the brightest to go to the top to make decisions for us. If you have a parallel health system that I will call scholarship based on the Joan Williams scholarship program, and you powder it up and give it a good facial, and you call it bursary, what does that add? And you know where I'm going with it? If you don't have a meritocracy system in your system, you got failures. And I'm going to show you where the Prime Minister mouthing out with respect to failures in the public health system.
Very quickly, caller, make your points. Go ahead.
Why have we failed in the public service? Because we're not using meritocracy. We're using friends, family, and political thing for appointees.
Nepotism, yeah.
How can we have a person like Fitzgerald Hines at the top of the Minister of Security? How can you have a fella like Dazzling Thomas, who is very well known for the visual arts, as the head of the NCRHA? If you want to put the best person in VAPA and visual arts, you should have a point. You know the best person for that? A fellow by the name of Peter Minshall. You'll put him as head of NCRHA. He far superior. He had on the world scale, designing mass and things like that. I mean, I'm being facetious, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull a point.
But thank you, caller. Thank you.
Sorry, we have to cut you there.
We have to cut you there. Thank you very much. Actually, by the way, Davin Thomas, who is the CEO of the NCRHA, is also now the gentleman, the director of the carnival events that the NCC is putting on this weekend. He's directing it.
Oh, I mean, it's going so well.
It is. He's actually directing the creative mindset, the creative genius of Davlin Thomas, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the NCRHA. Go look at his resume, by the way, on LinkedIn. You can go and look it up.
With regards to the ESCL debt and the court ruling, the one thing, though, is that debt, that money owing, is reported to be 4 years old. Now, no evidence has been put forward to counter that claim with regards to the legitimacy of that debt and that money owed. So we could only assume it's to be true unless a whistleblower comes out and says that claim is
Sean,
not true. But a judge rules for it.
More importantly, you need to look at the contract involved, why defense wasn't filed, and there are many other contractors.
No, but what I'm saying is I don't think it was a kickback, but I do suspect some favorable behavior was involved. But
no defense in itself is a favorable behavior.
Right.
Unless they could afford to hire
I don't think
attorneys.
it was a kickback. I think it was the case of, well, let's just give him his money.
Good morning, caller from San Fernando.
Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to comment on two things. One, I listened to the Prime Minister's speech in the gas conference, and it seems as if that seems to me as a doubling down on we're not going to diversify the economy.
Yeah.
Because the Prime Minister, in a system where we have lower gas volumes coming out of the ground, even if we get higher prices, we're still going to be in the same position in terms of revenue. And there seems to be no plan, no serious plan of trying to diversify this economy. It seems as if it's a doubling down on we sticking with gas and the energy sector, and that next thing, what we call diversification, we're going to see about that probably later down, kicking the can down the road, so to speak.
As we always have.
And one other thing, Keaton, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline has not been effected, eh?
I know.
You said Nord Stream 2, so
yeah.
It is Nord Stream 1 that supplies Europe.
Okay.
And it is 40% of the gas
that is supplied to Europe.
That is supplied to Europe from Russia right now, 40%.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So with regards to moving away from diversification, there is a catch. We need to use energy revenue right now. We can't just diversify and say, oh, we're just going to plant and that'll replace energy revenue. The key is that the Prime Minister, he's talking about energy reserves that have been recently found that we haven't accessed yet. So by the time we access them, I'm not too sure if the situation will be as favorable. But yes, I do think that his presentation more or less is an indicator where diversification is once again going to be the red-headed stepchild that goes back in its corner to sit while the energy sector continues to do whatever it is that they do. And hopefully, if we get into a windfall, the investment of it will not be what we've seen within recent years. We have a caller from Gasparillo.
Good morning, caller.
Morning. You guys hearing me?
We're hearing you loud and clear.
You're live.
Keaton.
Talk to me.
I heard you just now, like as though you were upset with the fact that nothing is going on with Annie Rao.
I'm not upset over it. I'm surprised.
Why don't you bring Faris on your show and drill him not only about Annie Robert. We have Jared Ramdin and the other guy Mooni Lal. I am all fed up with that.
Yeah.
Why they taking so long with that?
Well,
are they in cahoots?
I will. Well, caller, I am not privileged
listen
to
off
say.
air.
Yeah, I'm not privileged to say everything I know on air. I can't state everything I know on air. I've tried to contact the Attorney General quite a few times, actually, to invite him onto the program. Many times. Has not really worked out. That doesn't mean I will stop. But what you're alluding to in terms of them having some sort of coalition because of corrupt practices and behavior, I cannot blame you for coming to that opinion because of what we're seeing.
Here's a different theory. It's not necessarily that they have a collusion or they're in cahoots, but it is a situation where if I do too good of a job and enforce the laws and close off avenues for corruption, then either I will be chased after with my own corruption or I will not be able to do what it is you were doing, and I don't want to close it off.
You see, the thing is, caller, another thing, if I could call the Attorney General to speak about Anna Roberts, I'm also going to ask him about Marley McDonald. And I'm not going to get any response.
Exactly.
I'm not going to get any
That's
response.
basically it.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but you understand what I'm getting at.
You expect the politicians to be the pot calling kettle black? They're not going to do it at some point. We have another caller.
Good morning, caller from Shigonas.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Professor.
I agree with everything you said about this Russian matter. But I must stress that one of the major causes is Donald Trump. He allowed this thing to start when they annexed the first part of that nation. The Russians had people in America giving out false information, and this was discovered, and nothing was done about it because Donald Trump controlled the legal department. Everybody said, complain that America trying to play policeman for the world, and now it is time for them to have a policeman for the world. America is very reluctant to go inside. So I suggest you also take those points. And before I finish, you expressed some surprise that I wasn't satisfied with my response from your colleague yesterday. How could I, when she, as usual, did not answer the question? Was there a technical report? She gave the impression that she said we decided to change it for those dubious reasons, which I point out was wrong. And although the politician, the cabinet can do that, there is a principle in administration that discretionary powers cannot be arbitrarily exercised. That means you must publish what is the public servant's view and then give your reason for it, which I've been trying to get out from her for months and she would not apply. And this principle was confirmed in our court in a case held by Justice Bernard, in which L.J. Williams, I think was the commissioner of, there was guys on the docks there, I forget the name, And one of our foremost lawyers represented L.J. Williams, the guy who became the first head of the Caribbean Court of Justice, De La Bastide, and it was confirmed
President of the Caribbean
that discretionary powers cannot be arbitrarily exercised. You have to give your reason.
Yeah.
Same thing applies to property tax and all these other things. Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a great day, Professor.
One thing, I'm not going to say that I disagree with what the professor said about Donald Trump with regards to the politics when he came into power. I will say, though, that Donald Trump did come into power in 2016 and Crimea was annexed in 2014.
2014.
So to what extent should have, and I'm not sure if necessarily, to what extent the U.S. should have proactively gone in and interfered with the situation at that point in time, that is very debatable. There are pros and cons to it because, yes, by allowing Russia to annex Crimea, essentially you could argue that was the first domino to fall, because I will just say that apparently Putin remarked that with regards to Crimea, we must start working on returning Crimea to Russia. So I would just assume that Ukraine is now in a similar situation. He has started to work on returning Ukraine to Russia.
So the USSR, probably the creation of the new Soviet Union.
And essentially that's going to basically mean everything east of Germany
because
is going to be
claimed. Georgia was before Crimea. Under Bush, he invaded Georgia. So that's another thing to look at. Anyway, good morning, caller from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
Yeah. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment here concerning the, when you were speaking about Paris Arrow, you couldn't come to terms with the allegations against the three people you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But the point about it is that he who alleges must be able to prove. And after 6 years, if you can't prove, something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that is very, I can understand 6 years has gone by and you up to now you cannot come with something substantial. Then you're hiring a person who is a SC, and then now you're finding problems with that SC, and he cannot even come forward and say something to you.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you stand with all these sort of allegations you make? The next thing I wanted to mention, I was watching an Islamic station last night, and pertaining to the fires they had in Bambolia, the person who said that they bought the land, but then after some years the lease expired. I don't understand that statement, because if you bought land, you shouldn't have a lease. It's either you bought a lease, you cannot buy land and have a lease. I don't know if I'm correct or not.
Okay. I don't know how best to explain that, but I know that you buy something, it's in your name sometimes for like 99 years. So you get a 99-year lease, and they use the term bought. I don't know how long that lease was in relation to what he was doing.
You cannot buy something if you don't have, if you have a lease.
I know, it's just, it's the term.
I was living in West Moorings.
Yeah.
And we had this for 199 years, but we never owned the land. And when we sold the property we sold, we never get any benefit from the land. So that's why I'm thinking of that comment.
Yeah,
you know,
it's wrong, because it's leasehold land that he would have been referring to, not freehold. So.
Yeah, but you say he bought the land.
Yeah,
so
yeah. So
I think that's a wrong statement.
it's a confusion of words, I suppose.
And technicalities, I think.
But thank you very much, Colin. You make a valuable point.
You all have a good day.
You too. Good hearing from you. You make a very valuable point in relation to the Attorney General, because you're right. It's all allegations, and it's only going to remain allegations until proven. But to me, the mere fact that Anna Roberts was removed from office, the mere fact that Anna Ramlogan was removed from office when their party was in power is a lot, states a lot, and should be looked into as to why. Good morning, caller from Diego Martin.
Hi guys, good morning.
Good morning.
You. Yeah, with regarding this war now, so we're seeing that they actually want to take Kiev because the defense minister says the plan is not just to encircle it, but to take it just like we just saw them do, the Taliban do in Afghanistan and other places. So he wants to topple the government and replace ministers with his own. And yes, Sean, he's just like Trump because he's created his own insane big lie. Because Zelensky is Jewish, and Putin thinks he's trying to just denazify Ukraine, which is absurd. Get rid of nuclear weapons, which Ukraine doesn't have because they gave up all of them already. And he also thinks they're allowing the U.S. to come in with nuclear weapons to attack Russia. You know, so it's just really, really insane,
I think
the
there's
whole
some
thing. And last night, it was really surreal as I watched Matthew Chance on CNN putting on his protective vest.
Yes.
Also,
Yeah.
as he was hearing the first explosion. So these people literally saw the sky changing from nightfall to dawn, you know, as the first explosions were coming in.
Yeah, we're
And
getting
I
some images and footage right here. I'm actually getting it on my phone, and I'm in
Yeah,
awe.
and I just had the images of when the U.S. invaded Iraq for WMD. But the other thing is the irony of the U.S. talking about a sovereign state, which yes, they are a sovereign nation, you know, but it just brings back so many other wars and invasions that we've seen before.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
can't
it
believe we're
for
going
now.
down this
Thanks.
road again,
Bye.
but thank you very much. Sean, 21st century, 2022, and yet again we're heading down this road.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, look, he annexed Crimea and he said it, you know, time to return it to Russia, time to now return Ukraine to Russia. So I think if anyone thinks this is because of Russian security concerns, at the end of the day, it's to the point where it's unfounded. If America wanted to put nuclear weapons close to Russia, there's Scandinavia, there's other places potentially, right?
Effectively, we're seeing history repeat itself.
To some extent, yes. But you see, and therein lies the question. Is he paranoid and delusional? Or is he just a man looking to conquer other nations out of greed? No. You can't be a sovereign state. I want you. Because that's essentially, that is the theory of what China is looking at towards Taiwan, particularly because Taiwan is so rich. Now, Russia could be looking at Ukraine and the other Eastern European states and says, no, your natural resources should belong to me. I should be able to exploit it and decide what to do with it. And again, it comes back to at what point are we going to say enough is enough? Because the problem is we've gotten so accustomed to peace, nobody wants to say, okay, we have to stand up to the bully. Which is ironic because then people will protest and say this country's a bully and that country's a bully. But in the face of actual threat of invasion, there will be certain countries that might probably still be in denial and say, nah, Russia will never come here.
I disagree with you stating that we've grown so accustomed to peace.
I
think the better term to use would be stability, to a certain degree.
At the end of the day, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq barely affected the rest of the world. And with regards to resources spent and casualties, both military and civilian, it's not going to be close to what would happen if NATO went to war with Russia. We will see something that a lot of people would never have, we have not experienced it in our lifetime.
Now, to a certain degree, whilst you're right in stating that it didn't affect the globe, you have to remember that it also sprung up a global jihadist movement as well. And a lot of it was blamed on the United States. But
yeah, but that existed
it existed before. But as I use the word sprung up, as I said, it existed before perhaps, but we saw it becoming more and more prominent globally.
A lot of the movements that sprung up after the invasion of Iraq were localized, and for the most part, they somewhat petered out, right? They never really went international. They were too concerned with whatever fighting was done in the region, in part, not just against the US and Iraq, but you could say in Syria and so forth. That was internal with Kurds, Kurd militia, Iraq freedom fighters, Western volunteers against Muslim fighters.
Anyway, folks, that's all the time we have for Talking Point this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll have to wrap up with my co-host and colleague, but in your daily endeavors, please stay safe and keep well, wash your hands, wear your mask, and watch your distance. Consult with a doctor to get vaccinated. And yeah, that's it. Personal responsibility for Trinidad and Tobago. Sean and I will see you again tomorrow morning on Talking Point.